Hello, welcome back to the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'm Andrew Musgrove, joined by John Gibson for the match preview. Newcastle return to Premier League action after the international break as they welcome Manchester City to St James's Park. As always, this episode is sponsored by NordVPN. Do click the link in the podcast description box to take advantage of a discounted offer on your NordVPN plan. No risk with a 30-day money-back guarantee. John, welcome back to the show. Have you enjoyed the last 2 weeks?
No, not particularly, but I didn't enjoy the 2 weeks before that, mate, with the results. I'm hoping I'll feel a lot better on Saturday night, though I'm not certain.
Yeah, fingers crossed we do. I mean, just on the international break, I mean, I'm not a big fan of it, as our listeners and viewers know, but actually this international break's been quite entertaining. I imagine quite a few of us were watching Scotland versus Denmark, and that was a very entertaining end to that game. But in terms of Newcastle's players who have been away on duty, particularly Nick Valdemare, he's had a brilliant time away with Germany, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has, and I'm hoping that he brings some of that feel-good factor back with him. Not only feel-good factor for Newcastle United, but for him himself, because he needs to kickstart again, having had the wonderful start he had with Newcastle, and the goals have dried up. We need him to kick on because basically we rely on him so much. In a perverse way, we rely on him as much as we did on Isaac, without the end product necessarily being the same. But we do rely on him. He is the only guy up top with Wisa injured. So I'm hoping that 4 goals in his last 3 internationals spark him off when he comes home. But I mean, the comparison, and we'll get into it later, no doubt, Andrew, but the comparison between him and Haaland is frightening.
I mean, does it make Eddie Howe's team talk that little bit easier? You know, he's seen Valdemar score these goals for Germany, playing as that number 9. And basically, the bottom line is service. So, you know, he's seen what Valdemar can do when the ball comes into him into the box. Has he got to sit down with his wingers where he chooses to play on Saturday and say, look what the big man can do if you just provide him with the service?
Well, I think and I hope that Eddie has had a very, very good look at both the matches that Voldemort played for Italy. I do apologise, for Germany. I mean, the first one was against poor opposition, but he still had a score, and he was the only guy that did score for Germany. But I hope he had a look at it tactically, because Germany play a different way to us, they set up a different way to us. They get people around them quicker than we do. They play really with a 10. And ironically, he's supposed to be the quintessential 10, but he plays 9 with a 10. And I hope Eddie has looked at them tactically and thought this might be a way with a slight bit of tweaking for us to get the best out of them as well.
And that's why everyone's kind of been saying. I mean, I suppose more people have been saying he could be the number 10 and Wissa the number 9, but obviously Newcastle won't have that option on Saturday. I mean, you say there, John, you hope Howe's looked at how Germany set up. I mean, maybe he has, maybe he hasn't. There's no chance he's going to change the tactics and formation for Saturday, is there?
Well, if he doesn't, we'll lose. I mean, he's got to change the tactics, not necessarily the formation, because he can't play with Voldemort as a 10 because Wissa's injured. So he plays 9. But he's got to look at the way to get bodies about him. And that is just not only as simple as the wingers getting crosses in early. I think, to be truthful, Murphy's as good as that at doing that as anybody. I mean, Murphy doesn't take too many touches. He normally just whips the ball in. But not just the wingers have got to whip the ball in for Voldemort, but I think there's a great responsibility on Bruno and Joelinton, if Joelinton's the other guy, to get up and support like a number 10, and on occasions get beyond Voldemort into the box to give us a real presence in the box, because we haven't had that since last season. We didn't have it before we got Voldemort and we played false nines, and we haven't had it since Voldemort has come, because he does drift out and drift deep, and we haven't had enough bodies in the box. It's as simple as that, or as difficult as that. So I think the emphasis is on his wingers, but it's also on his two. If you accept that Tonali would probably be the sitting one, it's on the other two to get up very quickly in support of their centre forward. But having said that, and we all talk, and we talk rightly, Andrew, in my opinion, about Voldemort. He's got great feet, he's got a good brain, he's enthusiastic, he's a clever player. Let's give him all the support. He has also got to start helping himself in Newcastle colours. It can't be all one way. He's got to get in the box more often than he does. And he's got to play higher up the pitch. And when we haven't got the ball, he has got to be part of the press. Newcastle's game has always been about the press. Alan Shearer, quite rightly in the last fortnight, has said the biggest thing missing from Newcastle United currently is the high press. They're not doing it. They're not playing with the intensity. They're not getting the results. One of the problems on the high press is the Voldemort. His gait when he hasn't got the ball reminds me a lot of John Joe Shelby. He ambles, and you can't play a high press unless everybody presses together and everybody presses at the same speed, i.e. quickly. And Voldemort has got to be part of that and press quicker. He does at times when he hasn't got the ball, bless him, remind me of John Joe Shelby, the way he gets around the pitch. He's got to get round the pitch quicker than that. I know it's not his natural game, and we should know that, but needs must at the moment until the cavalry arrives, i.e. Risa, or the January transfer window. He's got to try to... Both him and the rest of the team have got to make the best of the fist they've got. And yes, the emphasis is on Eddie and the other players to provide support for Nick, but it's also on Nick to make that extra effort and out of his comfort zone as well.
It's difficult for him, isn't it? Because essentially, I think the instruction that I would give if I was Eddie Howe, there would be two key points. It would be you've got to step up and you've got to press a bit higher. You've got to be a bit quicker when you're doing that, but also you've got to be disciplined enough not to drop deep, even though that's what your natural instinct is telling you to do. I'm just thinking for a young lad coming to the Premier League whose natural game is to drop that little bit deep, is to get more involved with the ball, bring others into play, that they're two big instructions and unnatural instructions to perhaps for him to take on board. I mean, one is bad enough, but two, is it really realistic to expect him to change his game with those two instructions?
You've got to ask him to. Needs must. Needs must. And Newcastle are dealt the hand they've got. Maybe it would have been different if Wissa had been available from the start. But he hasn't been. And needs must. And if we are going to give him as much support as we can, and we haven't, let's be truthful, in fairness to Nick, we haven't done it well so far. But if we're shouting a lot and we all are, come on, the rest of the team, come on, Eddie, give support to Nick, it's got to be a two-way street, Andrew. He's got it. It's all right saying, well, my natural game's to fall back, so I'll fall back, and I'm not a great presser because I haven't got the pace to be a great presser. It's all right saying that, and that's the end of it. But if others have got to change their game to suit him, he has also got to change his natural game to suit the Newcastle United team he's been put into.
Let's go on to the starting 11 then, because it's going to be an interesting team sheet. I want to first off concentrate on the wingers, because you've already mentioned Jacob Murphy, and obviously we're talking about Voldemort needing the service, and his first thought, Murphy, is just to get that ball into the box. But I do wonder whether this game is more suited for Anthony Elanga, because Newcastle are not going to have a lot of the ball. They're going to be penned in, and they're going to have the best chance of hurting Man City on the break. And I'm just thinking, is that where Elanga's speed and actual, good points of his game lend itself to him starting on Saturday?
Well, if I'm going to be horrible, I'm going to say at this stage, what good parts of his game? Because we are looking for them, but we haven't seen them yet. And if what he'd been, and bless him, by the way, bless him, I thought he did great at Nottingham Forest, and I'm desperate for him to be a success at Newcastle United. I'm not full of criticism, but my eyes see what they see. And at the moment, he's living on two things: A, his pace, and B, what he might produce, his potential. Now, if we talk about his pace being terrific, and there's no one faster, all right. But Murphy's not a slouch. Murphy's not slow. Murphy's quick, but he'll give you the extra bit in finishing. I'm making Murphy out, bless him, to be this wonderful player, and we wanted to buy an outside right last season to have an upgrade on Jacob. But Jacob is ahead of Elanga at the moment, while not, in my opinion, the greatest in the world, but good. Elanga, yes, but then we've got to gamble on potential, haven't we? Yes, he's quick, but I don't know that he's that much quicker than Murphy. Murphy's not slow. And yes, it's a conundrum, isn't it? Because if he doesn't go in, he's not going to get that form. If he doesn't start, he's not going to get that form, etc., that we need him to get. But I mean, yes, you've mentioned the wingers. Do you gamble on what Elanga can be and put him in for his pace, or do you go with Murphy because by the way, Murphy's delivery into the box is the best of any of the wingers, and Elanga's is possibly the worst delivery into the box, actually. So which do you go with at outside right, and do you go with Gordon if he's fit, or Harvey Barnes at outside left? So there are problems that only Eddie can decide what the answer is, and he's starting at 11 on Saturday tea time.
Yeah, I mean, if it was me, I'd be going Harvey Barnes. I think Anthony Gordon needs to be sent a message. However, if he's fit, I think Eddie Howe does go with Anthony Gordon. This is the sort of game that he tends to perform well in. But I guess, John, we're talking about wingers, but actually the first question we probably have to answer is, what formation does Eddie Howe pick? Does he decide to go 5 at the back? Because if he does, then that obviously changes the team selection in the midfield and potentially up top as well.
Yes, it does. I think you could go 10 at the back and you wouldn't stop Erling Haaland at the moment, mind, if that's what we're worried about. But if you go 5 at the back, it's interesting because you haven't got Byrne to be the third centre half, because he's suspended. So you've got to go, you've got to stick Shaw in there, I guess, with Botman and with Chow, and that's a possibility, and that would change things greatly. I mean, Hall should be a shoe-in for left back. He's the best left back, if not the only left back we've got on the books. And he did very, very well for England under 21s in the last fortnight, which will have done his confidence as well as his fitness an awful lot of good. So it's a matter of whether you go with 3 centre-halves or not. And if you do go with 3 centre-halves, you're going to imbalance your team, because who are you going to sacrifice?
Well, who would you sacrifice if indeed it is 5 at the back?
I think I would go 4, but if he is going to, because you're going to imbalance the rest of the side. And as I say, by the way, the fella that did the best against Haaland recently was Lascelles, who we'll forget about, who had a very good game against Haaland, who I think still managed to score. Was it last season or the season before? But no, it would be Shaw if it was a 3. Do you then go with Murphy playing as a wing back instead of Trips? Or do you take somebody off the wing or somebody out of the midfield? I mean, because it's like that, I would go with a 4 and say, look, we can go with a 6 to look after Haaland, and then they can still win 1-0 because we haven't got anybody else further up the park. In a certain situation, you've got to make them worry about you more than you worry about them. But I could well see him going with a 3, but it's off going to imbalance the rest of it. For that reason alone, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I would stick with 4 at the back, with Trippier, Chow, Botman, and Lewis Hall.
Yeah.
Then into the middle, Tonali, Bruno, and I would go with Joelinton. I think this is the kind of game you need Joelinton.
Yes, it is. You need him at his best, but it is the sort of game you need a Joelinton, and nobody alternative has got the physicality of Joelinton.
And then, as I said, Barnes on the left, with Alanga on the right, and Valdemar up front. If it's Eddie Howe's side, I think it'll be Gordon, and I think it'll be Murphy out on the flanks. I mean, the thing that concerns me the most, John, is that you look back at that Brentford game, and it wasn't just one or two or even three players that just didn't turn up. It was pretty much the whole side. Malik Chow, maybe Kieran Trippier could have come with a bit of praise. That's concerning, because you're not just looking for a reaction from two or three players. You're looking for a reaction from the whole team. And I'm just thinking, when a team tends to play bad, it's very rarely the whole team. There's always one or two that maybe pull the rest of them through.
Sure, absolutely.
Against Brentford. So who are you looking to kind of not only boost the spirits, but actually set the standard on Saturday?
Oh, I mean, you're absolutely right. By the way, it was exactly the same at West Ham. They all played hopeless at West Ham. Thank goodness this game's at home. Although it's hardly any easier because we are on a downer and Manchester City are on an upper. So it's hardly any easier than going away to West Ham or away to Brentford. But yes, you're looking for... I mean, they infuriate me at the moment, Andrew, because there's so many players living on their reputation at the moment and not on their form. Because on their form, they were all poor, or 9 of them were poor in the last game, but they've got huge reputations. We've got huge reputations all over the park, haven't we? You look at our centre halves. You look at the goalkeeper has been put into the England squad. You look at your 2 centre halves. You think of Trips and all. You think of your 3 midfielders that are touted as the best in the Premier League. You're thinking you've got Germany's centre forward. You've got England's outside left when he's fit. You've got Alanga if you're at 55 million. There's bags of reputation and potential and ability there. But so what if you don't have the rest? That was if you're not full of room and you're determined and you're gutsy and that's what football's built on. That's how in the cup you get so many giant killings. The opposition are full of the good big names, but the smaller ones wanted more. And yes, we're looking for a big response. We've got it at home to a certain extent on results, but you know what? Our home form hasn't been that great. We're form, not the results necessarily, but our home form hasn't been that great. This hasn't been a good season overall in the Premier League. And you know what worries me, Andrew, is that the last time we played in the Champions League a couple of seasons back, when we basked in it and we loved it and we had the 4-1 against Paris Saint-Germain and that, at the end of that season, we didn't qualify for Europe. Never mind the Champions League again, we didn't qualify for Europe in any shape or form. Now, if we don't wake up, we are not going to qualify for Europe in any shape or form this season because we're 2 points off relegation. Now, I think that we will wake up. I actually think the revival will come after the game against Manchester City, not the Manchester City game, but we will be. But by Jove, we better wake up quick, Andrew, or we're going to repeat what happened the last time, which then will have all the cynics saying the minute Newcastle have got a season of 4 competitions, they can't handle it.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we say Newcastle United need a response. Their domestic campaign needs to really get into gear, and it needs to happen now. But Man City is definitely not the game that you want to go into, knowing that you need your season to turn around and it has to happen instantly. On one hand, others might argue that actually this is the kind of game that Newcastle United get up for. The big teams come into town, and those players who are underperforming against Brentford and West Ham, they do get up for these world-class teams. However, the stats say totally otherwise. Newcastle have won just 1 of their last 35 Premier League games against Man City, losing 26. Eddie Howe has never won against Manchester City. This is his 19th attempt. Will he do it this Saturday? I'm not so sure. And just the final stat, John, just in case you had any glimmer of hope just somewhere in that heart of yours, Man City have won 12 times in the Premier League at St James's Park, which is the joint most away victories for them in this competition. I think the other one is against Everton. So the stats don't paint a rosy picture, but we can maybe live on that hope and expectation that Newcastle do turn up against the good sides, right?
Well, yeah, and that has happened on occasions in the past. I do remember not so long ago, Andrew, that Pep brought Man City up here. Aguero scored in the first 2 minutes to set them up, and we won 2-1 with a Matt Ritchie penalty. That's what I'm clinging on to more than the stats you've just given me. I'm clinging on to that. And that was a good City side. Aguero was a centre forward that almost scored as many goals as Haaland. And he scored within 2 minutes. And I was sitting back in the press box thinking, here we go again. And when is it today? Let's keep it respectable. An hour and a half later, the final whistle goes. Matt Ritchie had scored a penalty after we equalised and we won 2-1. I'm clinging to that if I've got to cling to something. Having said that, the definition of a good manager, and this is something I'm hoping Eddie will prove because he is a good manager with results, but Pep was written off last season. Didn't get a trophy. All right, the bubbles burst. Pep has only got one plan. He's run out of ideas. Players are over the hill. They're too old. This is the end of an era. Let's look at Arne Slot and Liverpool. They're the new Man City, etc., etc. Look at it this season. We're Liverpool and we're Man City. Man City are the only team pressurising Arsenal, and they are on the up and up. And he's rejuvenated his side because he's a good manager, Pep. He's rejuvenated his, and I'm hoping that Eddie's, who's on a little bit of a slump, not a big one, like City, who, by the way, on their slump last season when they didn't win a solitary single trophy, still managed to qualify for the Champions League. That's a definition of their slumps, not the definition of ours. But City now, you look at them. I mean, Foden has rediscovered his passion for living in terms of football. Doku is looking like a proper winger. I mean, pace and power and the ability to finish. When we're talking about wingers, he is looking fearsome. They've got the best stopper in the world between the wood in goal. And Haaland, well, dear, oh dear, oh dear. I mean, he's the finished article. If we think Volta is a work in progress, Haaland is the finished article. He combines power with precision. And you know what's frightening, my old friend? He's coming up here on 99 Premier League goals. The next goal he scores is his 100th. Do you think he'll fancy getting it up here on Saturday time? I've got a feeling that he might just. I mean, he's scored 14 goals, Andrew, in 11 Premier League games this season. That is 3 more than the whole Newcastle team put together. Now, and by the way, if we think Scotland's done incredibly well, and they have, getting to the World Cup finals, his goals have just taken Norway to the first World Cup finals in as long a space of time as it was with Scotland. So is he coming back here on a high? And I tell you what, it would take an armory of bloody real shot stoppers to finish him off and to curb him and to stop him scoring. He is at the moment. I mean, when he's not playing us, he's a joy to watch. I mean, his power and his precision. He's not just powerful. He's precise at the end of it, isn't he? He's powerful, but then his blood goes cold and he hits it with precision and power into the back of the net. He's a joy to watch, apart from when he's playing your team.
So what you're saying is, John, he's just a little bit good, isn't he?
He's a tad tasty.
It'd be very interesting whether Alan Shearer's working on Saturday, or is he going to be in his box at St James's Park? Because if Haaland nabs that goal on Saturday, then he breaks Alan Shearer's record that Shearer set in terms of the games it took to score 100 Premier League goals. And I think he's got something like 28 games to go. So
what makes you feel he'll get it?
what I was, funny enough, you mentioned there we're taking an army of shot stoppers, and that's the one team selection dilemma that we haven't spoken about. And maybe we can play both Pope and Ramsdale. Maybe the FA will give us some special requirement to do so. For me, John, I would be picking Aaron Ramsdale on Saturday. A lot of people will say, and I know you're a fan of saying this as well, that sometimes you become a better player when you're not playing regularly. And I think some people would apply that to Aaron Ramsdale. However, I just think Nick Pope's making too many mistakes, and while he's keeping the scoreline down because he's making some good saves in games, he's also costing Newcastle United too much. And for me, I just think now is the right time to make that switch. It's a huge call. And of course, you've mentioned Haaland there. What a challenge that would be for Ramsdale. But I just think now is the right time. And for me, I'd leave Nick Pope on the bench and bring in Aaron Ramsdale.
I think as far as Eddie Howe's concerned, there's absolutely no chance whatsoever of that happening. No hope in Bob Hope. I mean, I know it would be what the fans want. I can follow that argument. I've been talking about Ramsdale recently because I think he's a terrific shot stopper, etc. But hey, Nick Pope has just been recalled into the England squad. He didn't go because of his concussion the last fortnight, but he's also had a call from Thomas Tuchel telling him he's still the man for the number 3 spot for the World Cup, and he'll get his chance again in March. Do you think Eddie, formed with all that in front of him and his belief and his loyalty in players, do you think he'll drop him on Saturday? I think he'll be the first name on the team sheet. And I don't think he ought to be necessarily, but I think he's just been brought back in the England side. Eddie would turn to you and say, excuse me, if I'm wrong on starting with Nick Pope, is Thomas Tuchel wrong as well by bringing him back in the England squad? He's just done that. It won't happen this weekend. Nick Pope will play.
I agree. It won't happen, but I would like to see it happening. I think a lot of our listeners and viewers, and you as well, John, would like to see it happening. I did ask on social media for people to put their teams to me, and we've got one here sent in from Sandro's Laces, which is a lovely name, paying tribute to Sandro Tonali, time wasting in the Carabao Cup final by tying his laces at the death. And running down a few extra seconds on the clock. Sandra's Laces has gone with a team of Ramsdale, Trippier, Chow, Botman, Hall, Bruno Tonali, Ramsey, Murphy, Valdemare, and Barnes. And Mark has also got in touch to say he would bring Ramsdale in for Pope and would have Ramsey in for Joelinton. So your thoughts on that suggestion there about Ramsey in for Joelinton? A couple of people have said that's what Howe should do.
I can follow that as well as I can follow the situation in goal. I can follow that totally. I just think this isn't the match. I think we need to hope Joe's somewhere near his best. I know he was taken off injured last time. He's got a lot of injury problems, etc. But we need a beast in that midfield. If ever we need, after that game, when we go to Marseille or we go to Everton, there's a stronger case in my book for playing Ramsey in the midfield, because it'll be, forgive me for it, will be an ordinary match. There's nothing ordinary about it. It's a Champions League and 3 points away from home, but it will be played in. This is for beasts. This game to combat them and to kill them. We want to stop City when they get on the high dive board. We want to stop them before they get to the end of the board and jump in and blow us away. And that means midfield. And this is where Joelinton at his best with his physicality is needed. And we've got to gamble that he'll be at his best. I wouldn't start Ramsey in this one, but I would after that.
And we'll have the match preview on Monday or Tuesday ahead of the Champions League game against Marseille. Before I get your results prediction, John, tell our listeners and viewers what has to happen on Saturday for Newcastle to come out with 3 points.
Well, first and foremost, Lady Luck has got to appear at the ground at 12 o'clock, be taken in the boardroom, wined and dined, taken down to the dressing room and given a rapturous round of applause and a big kiss on the cheek from Eddie, and then hope that she smiles upon us for an hour and a half. That's the first thing that's got to happen. The second thing that's got to happen is we've got to remember the way we played when we were at our pomp, when we were at our best, when the midfield three were the best in the Premier League, when our wingers, when Gordon was playing for England. Shaw has got to remember that what he's doing recently is good enough. He's got back on the Germany side and he looks at, wow, Botman's got to think if it's now or never for Holland. Let's step up and do it. Pope's got to say, this is my chance to play in the World Cup. Voldemorti's got to remember that he's Germany's centre forward that's going to the World Cup and he's just scored 4 in his last 3 internationals. Everybody's got to be on blob. Everybody's got to have a heart the size of a frying pan. Everybody's got to have unbounded energy. And then we might just get something, as long as that lady is sitting on the shoulder of Eddie for an hour and a half. Lady luck.
Come on then. How is it going to go? Are we going to get anything?
I haven't told you all that. I'm going to prick the bubble. I honestly can't. I mean, I hope for a draw. I expect a defeat. I can't see. I've got to be truthful. As much as it hurts me, as much as I want to cling on to belief, as much as I think anything is possible in a one-off match, and anything is, we beat Man City with Aguero after giving them a goal start, etc., etc. When I look at Haaland and our firepower, when I look at how much Man City are on the up and up, when I realise they're not a one-man team because the way Foden's playing, the way Doku's playing, the way their keeper's playing, I think we'll lose narrowly. But I think before anybody says anything, it's not doom and gloom. I think we'll be okay. I think there will be a revival. I think it'll come after the Man City game, not in the Man City game.
Yeah, and I guess what you also might say is that the performance would be okay. They won't be battered, and it'll give them that little step up to Marseille and so on. The kind of the green shoots of recovery, if you like. I think what's more concerning for me, John, is that if you ask me about my confidence about getting something against Man City or getting something against Everton, I would say I'm confident of neither, but I'm more confident of them getting something against Man City than I am of Everton, which paints a worrying picture about how this domestic campaign is going thus far. Saturday, we say they get up for it, but Man City, like I said, just unstoppable. I mean, they've won the last 4 in a row, scoring 13. Easily picked apart Liverpool, Borussia Dortmund, and then Newcastle United are just not on their level. I just think the whole group just doesn't look happy, doesn't look comfortable right now. I think that will still be there on Saturday. So I think they will get beat. Like you mentioned, Haaland's just in brilliant form. Foden's rediscovered that form as well. So I think they will get beat. And if I'm being totally honest, do I see it being a close game? I don't see it being a narrow victory for City. I could see Haaland running away with this, to be quite truthful with you. So I'm not going to even dare to put a score on it, but I think Newcastle will get beat, unfortunately, on Saturday. And we're just being honest, aren't we? That's all we can do.
Yeah, we can do that. But the big thing is, in our heart, we're praying to be wrong. We're praying for a miracle, and we're praying for Newcastle to win. And it will be a miracle if they do the way Haaland's playing and the way we've played in the last 2 games. And while we'd be relieved and delighted, wouldn't it open another box of worms? How do we do this and then play the way we did at West Ham and at Brenton and win? What will happen when we go to Everton? Not to mention Marseille away, of course, in midweek. But that's all a new ball game for another day. Let's just hope that if we do get beat, what I've said I still believe will happen in the long term, which is a revival that will take us safe, will happen. But I'll repeat what I said about midway through this podcast, Andrew. If we don't get our fingers crossed, history is going to repeat itself. And a Champions League season is going to end with us not qualifying for Europe at any level in the next season. And that's what we face at the moment. And that is a big concern for every Geordie.
Certainly is, and that'll be a big concern for Eddie Howe as well. But fingers crossed, me and John are very, very wrong about Saturday. Newcastle managed to upset the odds and pick up at least a draw against City. Hopefully a victory, though, and they can kickstart their domestic campaign. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. Do get into the comments on YouTube. Remember to hit subscribe. Give the video a thumbs up as well. If you're listening on the audio-only platform, do leave us a rating and review and share the podcast amongst your Newcastle United supporting friends and family. Really does help us grow the show and keep it coming to you guys for free. Me and John will be back next week to preview the game against Marseille. Me and Mark Withers will be back on Monday with the Monday show as well. Hopefully, like I say, celebrating an unlikely 3 points for Newcastle United, but stranger things have happened.